Hey, LCC friends and family. Lead Minister Brandon Bowe here with another Midweek Moment. It was such a beautiful day today. I couldn't help but film outside. I'm really glad that I did. But we are in a new month now, and we are hitting the back half of our buzzwords. And not to give you too much in the way of spoilers here, but our next three buzzwords are what I like to call the 3 Ds of church lingo, not to be confused with the 5 Ds of dodgeball. But the three words that we're going to be talking about today and in the next 2 weeks are ones that I'm certain that you've heard of: discipleship, discipline, and devotion. Discipleship is something of a lost word when it comes to the Christian faith. It's a word that I'm certain you've heard before. I know for a fact that we talk about it a lot, and yet I called it a lost word because it seems like it's a word that has a different meaning and different connotation based on whatever church setting that you currently find yourself in. Almost every church talks about discipleship, but when they're talking about that, they seem to have a different meaning in different locations and different contexts. More often than not, we have a tendency to confuse discipleship with church attendance. If you don't miss too many Sundays in a year, well, then you're a committed disciple of that church. And while sure, church attendance is something that is good, it's important, I'd even go so far as to say that it is a necessary thing in our walk with faith. It also does not necessarily mean that you are a disciple. Discipleship is a practice that dates well back before the time of Jesus. In fact, I think there's a good case to be made that Joshua was actually a disciple of Moses more than anything else. Joshua was not Moses' son biologically, but the two of them spent a great deal of time together. Moses saw something in Joshua that he felt was worth investing in, was worth pouring into. And so Moses spent a lot of time instructing Joshua on the ways of God and on the teachings of what the Lord had to share with Moses. Joshua was a beneficiary of all of that stuff. We don't know a great deal of every element that Moses spoke with Joshua about or all the teachings that he shared with him, but we know that Moses invested so much time in Joshua that when Moses reached the end of his life and it was time for the Israelites to go into the promised land, Joshua was the natural choice for the new leader. He was the one that made the most sense because he had spent so much time with a leader who had been there for those people's entire journey. But if we fast forward to the time of Jesus, we see a more deliberate plan of discipleship and really what all that entailed. Jesus had a lot more followers than the 12 disciples that we're familiar with, but he specifically chose those 12 guys that he would pour into. He trained them, he taught them, he expected more from them than he did anybody else who followed after him. Jesus was not the only rabbi of this time period to have disciples. In fact, it was a fairly common practice amongst that time period. But throughout the Gospels, we see that Jesus puts far more time, effort, and energy into these 12. And in fact, to make it even more narrow, we routinely see him pull aside even just 3 in Peter, James, and John. He shared his knowledge with them, explained his teachings with them, pushed them to go and do things that were difficult or challenging or uncomfortable for them even. He prepared them for what their lives would be like when his time to go back to the Father would come. And what was the end result of that discipleship? They changed the world. They took the knowledge and the experience and the time that they had shared with Jesus, and they poured that into other people, creating more disciples. We tend to make discipleship sound like it is such a daunting and even overwhelming task. If we're somebody who's new to the faith, we don't know who to turn to for discipleship. We don't know who we can trust, who we can rely on to pour into us, to give us good wisdom. If we're somebody who should be discipling others, though, on the flip side of that, we feel underqualified. We worry about whether or not we're able to do that. We worry about the time commitment that might be associated with that specific thing. But discipleship is so important to the life of the church. The church needs experienced Christians who have seen and done a lot in their faith, who have watched as God has transformed so not just their life, but so many other lives. They need that experience shared. Young Christians need to be taught how to maneuver through their relationship with God. They need to be shown all the things to watch out for, the guideposts, the warning signs. They need to be encouraged and built up. And that only comes through someone discipling them. Discipleship is so important to the life of the church, but also to those who receive that discipleship. It's challenging. It's difficult. It is pushing. It is getting people to move outside of their comfort zone. It is encouraging and building them up and wrapping your arms around them and ushering them into what should be the end goal for all of us, and that is spiritual maturity. We need to recapture the spirit of discipleship in the church. So let's work on that together. For the month of March, our book of the month is an oldie but a goodie. It is Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis is a name that you're likely familiar with. His series called The Chronicles of Narnia is one of the best pieces of fiction that have ever been put together. It's stories that are told generationally because it's so good. But C.S. Lewis himself was also one of the foremost authorities on Christian apologetics in the 20th century. He had so much to share about faith and about what it meant to follow Jesus and how to confront those challenges that we sometimes share in faith. In Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis provides a very logical and rational approach to explaining why we believe what it is that we believe as Christians. If you're somebody who's read Mere Christianity before, you're probably due for a reread. If you've never read Mere Christianity before, it is a fantastic read, and it belongs as part of our book of the month. In fact, I think that Mere Christianity is on my list of 5 books that every Christian should read besides the Bible. There are some tremendous works out there. We'll probably get the other 4 at some point in time, and I'll mark them as such for you. But Mere Christianity is a fantastic work, and I highly recommend that you invest your time and your effort into reading it. This has been your Midweek Moment. Take care of yourselves. Good job.